custom images. Now, if you're going for one of the big streaming platforms out there, such as YouTube or Twitch, then you also need a stream key, which you can get by clicking on the link in brackets and following the instructions. Last but not least, we want to go to the output tab, and it's really critical to set that right so that you can stream in the best possible quality without asking too much of your internet bandwidth or your computer. So let's talk about bitrate first. I don't know your exact computer configuration, so it's very hard for me to give any general recommendations here. But if you have a computer that's not so great and an internet connection that's kind of slow, you probably want to stay between 2.5 and maximum 8 megabits per second. So that would be 8,000 kilobits per second. This is pretty much what YouTube recommends for 1080p streaming, as you can see in the screenshot here. If you're going for a higher bitrate, then there's one setting in the advanced section that I really recommend to you, and that is to change your software encoding, which is handled by the CPU, to hardware encoding, which is managed by the graphics card, the GPU. This is because audio streaming is mainly taxing the CPU in the first place, and if your CPU is handling all the encoding duties on top of that, your CPU fans will spin up quite a bit, and you might reach your performance limits very quickly. Now, of course, there's way more settings that you can configure in OBS, but these ones should be more than enough to get you started with a good-looking and great-sounding stream. If you have any other questions or issues setting up your stream, then just write in the comments and I'll try my best to get back to you. Thank you so much and happy streaming. Hi there, this is Gregor from Personas, and today I want to talk to you about the hidden gems of Studio One. Certain features that I love using, but that not a lot of people are aware of yet. Check them out. Now, the first cool tip I want to show you today is hidden in the keyboard commands. And I know that a couple of people are kind of hesitant to go into this section, but just remember that you don't have to memorize all of these by heart, and that you can customize them to your liking. So if you always press your spacebar for play and pause, then just put your next favorite hotkey in close proximity and learn that one and go from there. Every hotkey that you add to your setup is a massive boost for your workflow, and especially this one, which I want to show you now, and that's page up skip and down skip. And I have them on shift page up and down, but once again, you can assign them to any other key that you like. And at first glance, they just seem to be, for the mixer section to go to your rightmost or leftmost channel, but it's much more than that. So when I'm going to my channel here, my Impact XT, and I switch to the insert effects chain, I can use the exact same key command to go to the next or previous insert in the chain. This is really powerful, especially when you combine it with the good old right and left arrow keys to go to the next channel. And this really allows you to browse the entirety of your insert effects incredibly quickly. I love it. What I really enjoy about Studio One is that I don't have a strict one-to-one relationship between my tracks, which you see here, and my channels. That means I can compose all of my different drum elements in just one track, but I still have the full mixing control with separate outputs for my kick drum, my snare drum, and so forth. Now, the issue I have is that there's no easy way for me, apparently, to hide all these multi-channels at once without also creating the same amount of tracks and then hiding them that way. Fortunately, there's a really nice workaround for this. Go to the Instruments tab, and we're going to drag any of these instruments, it really doesn't matter which one, onto our existing one. Now we're going to choose the Combine option, which is also what we do when we want to create a multi-instrument. And if you want to learn more about multi-instruments, I've pasted you a link to my tutorial covering this extensively in the video description. All right, so once we've done that, we can safely take this instrument out again and remove it. The only thing we wanted from this is to get this channel folder, right? Because essentially, multi-instruments are nothing else but a folder that's consolidating multiple channels to just one, so that you can basically summarize multiple virtual instruments that are perceived as the same sound and compose them in the same track in your arrangement. So let me just go ahead and do just that. So I extract the instrument or remove it right away. And now I'm going to call it Impact XT. And voila, that's all there is to it. Now I can expand my channels if I need to see them and collapse them when I don't. Now, because I don't want to do this every time, what I can do from here is just drag my little loop and get that into the files section of my browser. Once I've done that, Studio One is creating a preview file for me like it would with any audio loop. But the key difference here is that when I recall it in, say, a completely different song, I'm actually recalling the entire Impact XT virtual instrument together with all the channels, the channel folder, which is what we wanted, and all the insert effects and use samples and presets. It's absolutely brilliant. And of course, this also works for other virtual instruments with multi-outs, not just Impact XT. All right, so that's the beat I have going on here from Impact. And I want to add a couple more elements here. Maybe with this snare drum over here. But I want to do so with a couple of varieties that I could probably not play if I did it by hand. So there, another hidden gem of Studio One comes in really handy, and that's the note repeat menu. You're going to find that by clicking on the record panel, this little cogwheel symbol over here. And it's right here next to the record mode options for audio and instrument tracks. So to start, hit activate and then click on the little wrench tool here. And now I'm going to go to the single mode, which means that the last played element of my drum kit, in this case D1 for snare low, is going to be repeated depending on which note I'm playing. So if I'm playing D1 on my keyboard, it would repeat in quarter notes, and the higher I go, the faster the repeats. I also have triadic repeats here available, and you can play some very expressive and interesting grooving stuff with that. Let me show you. Yeah, super fun, as you can see. All right, so now that we have a beat going on, I'd like to add a bass line to that. And sometimes I don't want to do that from scratch. Instead, I want to just utilize a couple of other ideas I've worked on in the past. And I can do that in an incredibly cool and easy way in Studio One. So we switch to the Instruments tab here in our Studio One browser. And then it's as simple as dragging the My Tai onto an empty song space. It's going to create the instrument track for me. And now I can play it from my MIDI keyboard next to me. But like I said, I don't want to come up with something entirely new from scratch. So let me go to my Files tab instead. And now I'm in my song folder. These are old and new ideas that I was currently working on. And I know for a fact that there's one of these songs called one of my all-time favorites, where I used a couple of bass lines that I really like. And I would like to hear them with the sound of the Mai Tai that I have just imported into my project. And that's really, really easy. You can just open up the song file by clicking here, and I can access each and every instrument that I've used in this track. But not just that, I can also access all the presets for channels, synths, external devices, and even performances. So performances is all the MIDI information that is played in the song. And I'm going to go to the bass because I know I had a really cool bass line there. And if I double click these now, I can actually hear them played from the instrument I've currently selected. Isn't that awesome? This is coming from the Mai Tai of my project. But it's actually the MIDI bass lines from my other song. So I can essentially preview them together with what I have here. Just one single double click. I can even transpose the bass here. And if I say, yeah, that's exactly how I like it, just import it. And then make any other adjustments that I need to make. So that's another hidden gem for you right there. If you like this format, let me know in the comments, and I'm gonna make sure to have a new episode for you very soon. Thank you so much. Talk to you later. All right. Hi, everybody. How you doing? This is Gregor from Personas, live streaming to you today for the very first time in English, actually, for me. Super happy to see you. I see that we have more than 80 people watching already. That's kind of crazy. It's almost like everybody's home. Let's see who we got here. Any familiar faces? Hey, Mark, how you doing? Hi, George. Hi, James. Hi, Beto. Hi, everybody. How you? And I almost had my MacBook still on speaker. Hi, Giles. Jills, how you doing? Hi, Keith. And John already with the first question. Yeah, like I said in the description, I want to show you guys a couple of the workflow principles that we have in Studio One and give you some ideas for some creative ways how you can make use of them. But also, I want to take some time to address your questions. So if you have any questions throughout the stream, then keep them coming, and I try my best to see them and get back to you as soon as possible. So I see that John already got a question here. He would like to get some tips regarding looping, moving the loop, and extending it left-right without having to draw a new one, like Logic. Okay. Yeah, that's no problem with Studio One, actually. Let's go to the screen of Studio One right away. So I'm just gonna switch my camera here. And as you can see, I have a little drum groove prepared here and also a loop range here on top. Now, if I want to move this loop range around, what I can do is I can hold down Command on Mac, or I can hold down, I think it's Control on Windows. And as you can see, now I can just move the loop range like that. What I can also do is click on Option or Alt on Mac and Alt on Windows to extend the end range. And I can also Control click up here or Command click on Mac to change the starting point. What you can also do is press P. As soon as you press P and you have like events here, it's gonna change the loop range right away. What you can also do is customize this with another key command, such as make the loop and then zoom into my selection. And that is something I have here on my multi-mouse button. So there's many ways to achieve the same goal. Hey, Solid State Drive, how you doing? Good to see you virtually. Hi, Ronnie. Hi, Graham from Spain. Hey, that's awesome. Hi, Tim. Tim Talks Audio, also an awesome YouTube channel. Good to see you. Hi, Evan. Hi, Steve. Hi, Thomas. Johnny. Johnny is sick in bed at the moment. I hope that he'll get better very, very soon. Great to see you, Johnny. Hi, Wes. All right, so let me show you the first example that I have going on here for you guys. So I have a little drum groove prepared. I hope that you can hear this. All right, and that's coming all from one instance of Impact XT here, which is a drum sampler. And I really like it to be able to compose all of this in this pattern that you see here. But at the same time, I hear all of these individual instruments in the mixer separately so that I can process my kick and my snare, my hi-hats, each and every element of my drum groove slightly different. But let's say I want to add a bass line to that, and I want to do so with maybe like, an idea that I already had in the past. Maybe I don't want to do something entirely from scratch. And there's many cool ways that you can do it in Studio One, and they all revolve around the main principle, I would say, in Studio One, and that is drag and drop. Drag and drop is really that main core philosophy, I would say, of Studio One. If you're not sure how something works, then just try drag and drop. And I would say 9 out of 10 times it actually works just the way you expect it to. So many times you're also perhaps doing something in a way that's a bit more complicated than necessary. And drag and drop is seriously something you should try out in this case. So here, I want to add my baseline. Case in point, what I could do is right click here and then create an instrument track, just like in the old days. And then I could add, an instrument here to my mixer, maybe the Mai Tai. And then I could assign it here. And now I could start playing it from my MIDI keyboard. But as you'll agree, this is kind of clunky. This is not really the way you want to do it. And what we can do instead, all of these steps that I just showed you can be performed with just one drag and drop like so. And now I'm already able to proceed. So let's go to one of my previous song ideas where I already had a bass line that I was working on that I really enjoyed and try to get that into a groove that we're currently working on. So I go to the Files tab here in my browser. And as you can see, I have a couple of ideas here, song ideas that I was currently working on. These are just song folders on my hard drive that are navigated to. And now I'm just gonna expand the one of my all-time favorites folder, because that's one of the songs I was working on. And now I can click on this song and expand all of the information inside of it. So I have full access now to all the channel presets that I use in the song, to all the synthesizers used, as well as all the performances. Now the performances, that means all the MIDI information, all the MIDI notes I have played. And I remember that in this particular song, I had a bass line that I really liked and that I think could work quite well here. So how can I hear that together with the beat I have going on right now without having to go to the other song and then forgetting what it sounds like what I currently have? Well, it's as easy as just double clicking it right from here. And what's so awesome about that is that's being played from the synthesizer of my project, right? That is so cool. I can even transpose right from here. And now I can just hit play and hear it in context with the beat. And if I decide, yeah, that's something that I really like, I can just drag it back into my song like this and keep working with it. So this is like a really sophisticated drag and drop motion, but it's still super, super simple when it comes to, the interaction with the interface. Just think about all the commands, all the steps that were required for Studio One to do it. It kind of had to, access the other song. It had to pre-audition on beat in time. It had to make it so that it can be heard with the instrument that's currently available in the song. So all of these things were just done with one single drag and drop motion. Chris Thomas says, nice color scheme. Yeah, you can have it if you want. Let me know in a message if you want to have this, and I get it over to you. Tim Talks Audio. Gregor, in a recent video you did, you showed off the shortcut to quickly jump through plugins on a track. This is a fantastic tip and instantly made its way into my workflow. Oh yeah, that's really cool. That's great to hear, Tim. Thank you. So the one that he's talking about is in Studio One and keyboard shortcuts over here. And it's called Page, Up Skip, and Down Skip. And that doesn't really say much at first to us, but it's actually one of these multi-functional commands that we have in Studio One. Another one of these, by the way, is just up and down arrow key for navigation up and down. Why is that multifunctional? Well, depending on whether I'm focusing on a track or on notes, this is doing something else, right? It's the same command. It's just me hitting the pressing the up and down arrows. But depending on whether I have notes in focus or tracks, I'm either navigating them up and down or I'm transposing the notes up and down. And page right skip, up skip, and down skip is kind of the same thing. If I had many additional tracks here, I could use this command to go to the very beginning and the very end of this selection. But when I have my plugins open, then I can use the exact same hotkey to go through them really quickly, like so. Right? And that's really cool because that way I can really quickly go through all of my plugin settings and just confirm that they are exactly the way I want them. Even my neighbor is here. Hi, Ümit, how are you doing? So awesome to see you. All right. So let's look at a couple more examples for drag and drop. So this would be the first one that I got for you guys, but let's go back to this bass line that we had going on. And let's say I want to add a couple of effects to this. So let's say I want to add, a beat delay or something. I could either do it by clicking on the plus icon here and then going through my way too extensive list of plugins, or I could just choose the one that I want and just drag it onto here, and it's already applied on my bass line. I can do the same thing with a compressor, perhaps. Could sidechain it a bit to the kick drum like this. Yeah, that's also really fun. So that's another way that you can just drag and drop effects or entire effect chains if you want to a track like this. This would be an entire chain that's being added at once. And yeah, there's so many different ways that you can utilize this one workflow principle. I'm gonna show you something else right now. So let's go to the event effects here. So this is like a drum groove that I have. And let's say on these green events that you see here, these snare drums, I would like to have a bit of reverb, but only there, not on all the other stuff. And yeah, most of the time I would probably go ahead and then, search some reverb, maybe, I don't know, the open air, and then I would add it to my song. And then I would do some kind of bypass automation where I try to, keep the effect on bypass until I hit that snare drum, and then it would go, active and then inactive again. But that's a little bit clunky, right? So instead, what I would love to do, what feels the most intuitive and what's actually the way to go in Studio One, is I just select these two. And while holding down Option on Mac or Alt on Windows, I can just drop the open air effect only on these two events, excuse me. This one and this one. You can also see them down here. This event doesn't have any effect. This one does. It doesn't. And this one does again. And now we can immediately hear it. So that's another way that you can utilize drag and drop into your workflow. Let me show you one more way, which is a way I don't think enough people are using yet. Because not everybody is, a keyboard player. Not everybody wants to add their instruments with a keyboard. And what if we just use our voice instead? And that's also possible with drag and drop. And I want to show you that right now. So right here, I have a voice note from my iPhone. I just sang into my iPhone, and then I airdropped that over to my Mac Mini in this case. And then I just dragged it into an empty Studio One song. It sounds like this. Da, 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 da. So you can hear I'm obviously an amazing singer. But what I can do with this now is I can just edit this with Melodyne, which is tightly integrated into Studio One. I just right-click and edit with Melodyne. If you don't see it here in your recent items, you can also access it immediately from the audio section. or you can just hit Command and M on a Mac or Control and M on a Windows PC. And now I have all these notes that I was singing analyzed, and I also get this green MIDI progression here. And that means that I can now just drag this to a MIDI track like that, and I get the notes I was singing back in MIDI, so I can have these played by a synthesizer instead, like this. So that's a really, really cool way that you can work with drag and drop to get your voice notes into MIDI notes. Perhaps you have to do a little bit of auto tuning and correction, but then it's going to work right away. Let's see if we got any other questions from you guys so far. Can you select several notes in the pattern editor to change velocity to all of these selected notes? Don't want to ruin the scene. No, you don't ruin the stream, certainly not. So let's look at our pattern once more. Notice, by the way, how we can have all these songs open in the background at once in Studio One, which I think is really, really handy. And here we have a hi-hat pattern running through. And we're seeing the velocity of all of these right here. And I can change the velocities in different ways. For example, I can hold down Option and then click, and it's going to change the velocity of all these hi-hats in relation to each other, keeping the relation. Or I could do it with Shift, and then they all get set to the value that I clicked. Or I can just drag along like this, which is actually my preferred way. I think that's also really, really fast. Let's see if we have any other questions going on. With event effects, is there a way to keep the parameters in sync, or do they become fully independent? They become fully independent. So when we look back at our event effects example really quickly, when I change the open air on the first event, like let's turn up the pre-delay and the length, just so we see it really clearly. That's 6.93 seconds now. The other one is still at 4.79. So they're completely independent from each other. However, if I like the settings of this effect and I want to copy this over really quickly to other events, I could just slice these and then select them like so. And then I can basically just get it over like this. I have to do it one by one. I just realized myself, but it would be totally possible to do this. The sound and video quality in the stream is great. Oh, that's so nice to hear. I'm using just the classic OBS. I have a tutorial on how to set up a live stream with OBS on the YouTube channel, so make sure to check it out. Converting pre-recorded audio to MIDI. You can do that just the same way with Maligayang. My voice was just an example, but you could also play something with your bass guitar or your guitar and then transform that into MIDI notes just the same way. Let me show you one more thing that's perhaps a bit more interesting to guys who are working with audio a lot, who do like classic audio engineering stuff. And that also involves tried and tested drag and drop workflow. So I have a drum kit here, and you will probably agree that the kick drum and the snare are lacking quite a bit of punch. Have a listen. So what I probably want to do is add a sample to that to make that a bit better, or to make that sound a bit more powerful, punchy. And I have a kick drum prepared here and a snare drum as well. And now I would like to have that play at the exact same time as the original recording. The issue with that is I can't just start, making a pattern or something, because in this performance, you'll see that each of these notes is slightly offset, right? They always happen at a different point in time. Sometimes it's too early, sometimes a bit later than that. Sometimes it's dead on tight. And I want to keep that natural groove to the entire thing. So how can I make sure that the MIDI notes that I will add have the exact same groove? And this is where the groove maps come in really, really handy in Studio One. you can open them up by clicking on the Q button here for quantize and then changing to the groove section. And here we now are able to insert any kind of guide groove that we want everybody else to follow in. Has added one MIDI trigger up here. And now I can just either drag it right from here from this box or from here to my empty MIDI track. And now I have MIDI notes, which are just like the original recording, sometimes a bit too late, sometimes a bit early. And that really helps me, have a sample accurate MIDI layer with a sample. And oftentimes this is like expensive software that you have to buy if you want the same sort of functionality, but it's built right into Studio One. So now all I need to do is make sure that all of these triggers are actually on the node where I have my kick sample loaded. In my case, that's C1. So I just grab all of these. I'm gonna go Action and then Transpose. I prefer to just hit my hotkey for it, Shift and T, and say set them all to C1, please. And now you can see they've all been shifted to C1. And now the sample is playing along. Without and with. So let's do the same thing with the snare. I'm just gonna open up the Q menu one more time, take the snare, get it onto my groove map from here, just drag it down, transpose it to D1 because that's where my snare sample is loaded. Without and with. Already like a massive difference that you achieved here. See if we have any other questions. I apologize if I missed a couple of them. Absolutely love this. Makes music more intuitive and less technical. Thank you so much. It would much appreciate it. Is there a way to see a selected event more clearly? The light blue line across the event is just fine, but a little hard to see. One way you could approach this is try to use colors that make a pretty strong contrast to the blue outline. So if you go for something like orange, it becomes a little bit easier, but unfortunately, you're not able to change the color of the outline. This is going to be safe for replay later? Yes, I think so. Indeed. Good stuff. So let me show you another way that drag and drop is integrated into Studio One. Now we're talking about ARA. And ARA, that stands for Audio Random Access. That means that certain plugins, such as Melodyne from Celemony or Vocaline from SynchroArts, are capable of changing information with Studio One, not just at the playback point, but in real time. So Studio One is able to tell these plugins what's coming up. And that's really important for them because they can't do their processing in real time. Melodyne needs a little bit of time to, do the auto tuning that is so famous for. It can't do that in real time. If the plugin would only get the information at playback point, it's too late. And that's why you often have to record into Melodyne first before you can start editing in Melodyne. And that's sometimes a bit clunky because then you have recorded your audio into Melodyne and you make a couple of changes in your arrangement, and then you still hear the old Melodyne recording, and sometimes that can be very confusing. So ARA made that a lot easier, but it also opened up the door for completely new drag and drop workflows that I want to show you right now. So here I have a song with a couple of problems. For starters, the vocal is quite a bit out of tune, but you will also hear that it's not really in sync with the backing vocal. Have a listen. 'Cause we keep it all in. Stop the word from breaking. If you open up instead of holding out. Yeah, that's a bit extreme right here. So this used to be quite the task because we had to always trigger or always, how should I say, target these issues manually, right? We had to make a couple of splits and try to get that more in sync with each other. And while that's certainly possible in Studio One, as you can see, it's still so much easier with ARA and drag and drop. And I want to show you that right now. So I can just select these two vocals that are having the issue right now. And then I just go to audio and edit with Vocaline. Now you will only see this option if you have Vocaline installed. It's needs to be purchased as a separate plugin. But it's really cheap at the moment. I think it's below $100, and it's really worth every penny, I have to say. And once you install the VST3 version of it, you have this awesome functionality in Studio One. So I have both of these selected. I go to Edit with Vocaline, and all I need to do now is just tell Vocaline what's the guide. That should stay the same. And what is the dub, like the track that should follow the guide. And as soon as I've done that, the job is already done. Have a listen.
'Cause we keep it all in. If you open up instead of holding out.
It's incredible, right? Let me just remove this really quickly.
If you open up instead of holding out.
This is what it sounded like before. So that's really incredible how quickly we're able to align all of our backing vocals with something like Vocaline, thanks to drag and drop. And as soon as I hit render on this event effect, Vocaline is an event effect here, just as we looked at previously with the snare drum, you might recall it. Then you're going to see how it's doing its magic. Right? There you can see it. And it's the exact same way with Melodyne, which is already included in Studio One Artist and Professional. So I want to show you that really quickly. Because here in the chorus, I don't have such a dub vocal.
Won't you let me in? Baby, won't you let me in?
But let's say I want a backing vocal here, even though I don't have one to work with yet. And that's really, really easy, fortunately. So I can just grab the lead vocal here, and while holding down Option on a Mac or Alt on Windows, I just drag it onto my other track here and let go. Now I have the same thing twice.
Won't you let?
So it's just twice as loud. But what I can do now is right-click, edit with Melodyne once again. And now I'm analyzing my duplicated layer only, the notes that were sung here. Now I can just select all of these, transpose them up by maybe a third.
Won't you let me in?
So that's already much better, but let's look at this note here. Let's get that maybe here.
Won't you let me in?
Ah, very nice.
Baby, won't you let me in?
Ah, that one not quite, so let's just make that a bit more even here. Maybe here.
Let me in.
Ah, very nice. And then we can work one more time with the event effects that we looked at earlier. So I just want to have a reverb now, but only applied to this little bit of audio. So let me just split right here with a double click. I'm going to talk a bit more how I'm doing that in just a second when we talk about the Smart tool, which gets disabled by many beginners, but you should leave it enabled because it's awesome. And then I can just take this effect, drop it onto the event by, once again, holding down Option on a Mac or Alt on Windows. And now I have this reverb here, but it's applied only on this particular section.
Baby, won't you let me in?
Yeah, and that's how you can work extremely fast with drag and drop with Vocaline, Melodyne, and any other plugins that you desire. When duplicating an event with Melodyne on it, right now you can change them individually. My workaround is to copy it to a new track. Well, if you want a completely independent copy, what you can do after copying it over is to just bounce it really quickly. So you would just hit Command and B, And as soon as I do that, I can process this Melodyne instance from the upper one completely separately. So what it means is if I also had Melodyne activated on the lead vocal, it would sound exactly the same like my backing vocal right now. But that is because Studio One can't know that we want this event to be treated separately. Often we do not. So in this case, simply, select it, hit bounce, and you get a new file that you can process differently if you want. Can I somehow automate automation tracks? Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, you can. You can. It's an interesting question because yes and no, I would say. So let's look at an example here. That's a question that kind of gets my cogwheels turning in my head. It's a pretty good question. So let's look at the drum groove that we had going on earlier. It's of course still open in the background here, as you can see. So maybe I want to play around with the reverb like this. So I can just either right-click this and then go edit automation, which I can also do in a pattern because I'm in a pattern right now. And then I can start automating it like that. And I think depending on the shape, you get that kind of LFO effect. But I don't think it's possible that you can start, automating this shape once more. There's only a couple of workarounds for this. So I would check out, for example, our X-Trem, which can do similar things with panning and volume. So if you have like a volume automation going on, this could be a volume automation on top, and that might achieve the result that you're looking for. John Grötting says, producers in Sweden are starting to get their eyes up for Studio One. The trend is that many will be migrating from Logic and Pro Tools. Yeah, let's hope that's the case for sure. All right, so there's so many more things I could show you. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the pattern modes. I don't know how many electronic music producers are here, but this is a workflow that I really like to start, manipulating all my drum beats, because we all have all these drum loop libraries. Everybody has probably 1,000 of them, but while these sound really good and you can start dragging them into your project and start working right away, the issue is that millions of producers agree that these are great sounding. So it's very hard to sound different if everybody uses the same loops. And one way that you can work around that is by making loops your own, audio loops your own. And you can do that highly effectively with pattern. So this is a drum beat that I have going on. And I could start working with it, the traditional way, by just slicing up stuff and then, shifting things around by holding down Command and Option on a Mac or Control and Alt on the Windows PC. But it would always kind of stay the same loop. It wouldn't truly become something else. But what I can do with pattern, and that works not just with Impact, as I'm showing right now, but especially well with Impact, is I can start rearranging this in ways I could normally never do it. So let's get in the Impact XT. And what I'm going to do now is create a pattern for it by Option and double clicking. And you can see that I have 16 16th notes here in this one bar, obviously, because we are having 4/4 as our metric. So what I'm going to do is split this audio loop at every 16th note so that I have 16 bits of 16th notes of this loop. And you're going to see why I want that in just a moment. And then you go to Event and Split at Grid. So now everything is nicely sliced at the 16th. And now I go to the Impact XT, and while holding down Shift, I'm going to drop all of these samples on my Impact XT. Now, if I wouldn't do it, they would all get stacked on the same node, which I don't want to do, obviously. But I want to do it with Shift. And once I've done that, you can see that I now have the entire groove right here. So I also have my Atom. So you can perhaps see it a bit better. This is kind of the exact same audio loop that I can reproduce in the pattern now. So let me just open up this pattern, and I'm gonna draw in a diagonal line like this until I have 16 bits of 16 notes. Now I can delete this audio part on top and just play the impact one right here. Sounds exactly the same because it's triggering from the Impact XT, as you can see. And now I can do things with this that I could normally do, or normally never do, with this audio loop. For example, I can just add this note here to 5 instead of 16. That means while everything else is playing 16, like this one is only playing 5. And now I already have like an unpredictable variation because it takes quite a long time until that plays at the exact same point with all the other stuff. Can also add a couple of notes with Atom, just like that. And that way you can immediately turn this loop into something that's truly your own. Apologies if this is a noob question. There aren't any noob questions. Is it easy to automate effect sense? Yes, that's very, very easy. So let's talk about scent effects really quickly. And this is something that got me into Studio One way back in the day, like about 5 years ago. So I knew it from Cubase that I first have to create an effect track, and then I have to assign my effect to it. And then I have to assign it also in my channel that I want to have this scent effect. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised to see that in Studio One, none of this is necessary. So in Studio One, all I need to do is just grab any effect that I want. So let's go for one that's perhaps quite easy to hear, maybe this room reverb, and add it to the sense portion of our song. As soon as I do that, you can see there's actually the respective effect track being created right away. So I don't have to do it in 2 separate steps. I can just do it in 1 step. And if I want to automate this now, it's the same as with pretty much any parameter in Studio One. You just right-click the one that you want, and you go on Edit Automation. If you want to do it in here, in the track itself, or if you want to do it in a pattern, you could just right-click and add a pattern automation, and now I can write the automation right from here. That is entirely up to your own preference. What I like to do is write the automation in the track. Because now I can do certain things that I'm unable to do in a pattern automation. For example, I can go to the paint tool here, and I can choose something like this triangle. I have different waveforms available here. And now I can just draw in the automation that I like, maybe something like this. But I can also choose the transform tool, which is incredibly powerful, because now I can just take this automation that I've done, and now I can compress it together. I can invert it like that. I can stretch it if I want it to be a bit slower, or I can bring it together if I want it to be a bit faster. I could skew it up or down. And all of these things would obviously take me way longer to do if I did all of this by hand. And there's so many cool ways that you can utilize this. Also, when you have a two dynamic vocal or something, you can just draw in gain automation, just following along the lower half of your waveform and make really drastic movements. And once you're done, you can use the transform tool to compress it all together and make these massive gain changes that you've done very minor. And you can use that to, even out the volumes of your recording in just a couple of seconds. I have an entire YouTube tutorial up about that. It's called the transform tool. And if you're interested, you should definitely check it out. See if we have any other questions here. So I have more than 80 people watching. It's absolutely crazy. You guys are nuts. Move from Ableton Live and super happy. I was wondering, since we have pattern now, would it not be easy to create a pattern page to play around just like the clip view? Well, that's an interesting question because we don't have a session view like Ableton does. But what we do have is the ability to have Ableton and Studio One open side by side, and we can take advantage of both of these. So maybe I can show you that just very, very briefly right now. So let me just open up my Ableton. And one thing that's really important when you do this is that you disable in Studio One's preferences the rewire support, because rewire support will immediately disable things like plugin support, transport playback for Ableton Live. I have really found that they work way better together if you just leave rewire off. So now we have, let's just put Ableton to one side of my screen, perhaps. Let's put Studio One on the other one. Both side by side, open, as you can see. And let me just grab any kind of samples, any kind of loop that I have going on. Maybe something out of here. This one. And I drag that onto my Ableton. Let's say I'm working, in my Ableton session, and now I want to take advantage of Studio One. Now I want to process this clip here in Ableton in Studio One, or want to take advantage of ARA, Melodyne integration, and all these things I've shown you earlier. It's as easy as just dragging the clip out of your Ableton Live and into Studio One. Then you can do all your processing, and then you can export it to your files browser and bring it right back into Ableton. So this is one way that you could take advantage of another DAW in your setup, which I think is very, very exciting. I personally really have a thing for that kind of stuff. What is the fastest way to browse presets in the instruments? The browser, or are there several different ways? Well, there's different ways. We have the instrument browser right here, and we have several views now for it. For example, we can toggle from a tree view into the classic list view here. We can also show thumbnails or just show a list like so. And a really fast way to look for presets, in my mind, is to just expand an instrument like that and then look through them. And once you find the one that you want, just drag it in. So now I have this drum map loaded already.